Screen two. Here we go. Can you guys see this?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right. So for this week, we are talking about continuous improvement. And continuous improvement, we're going to break down into two aspects: continuous learning, individual and team. We're going to review learning traps and ways to avoid those traps and continuously improve. And then we're going to look at continuous improvement, which is slightly different from a team and organizational standpoint. So with that being said, continuous learning. So continuous learning. Hold on, I got to move this right now. A Zoomism. The best managers are always looking for ways to improve and develop their skills, right? They're also looking for ways to improve and develop the skills of their teams and empower them to do so. So one of the biggest things you have to realize is, regardless of how successful you are, where you are at this point, you can always grow. There's always a point of growth. There's always a point, a new level that you can reach. And a lot of that has to do with you empowering, taking control of your own learning, your own personal development, and making sure that you're growing with relative industry knowledge, relative academic knowledge, whatever you feel it, and that's at the current state. And then anything that's new and groundbreaking, right? Like a lot of the stuff that in my MBA program that we're talking about, I'm about a year and a half in, this summer wasn't relevant, maybe 2 summers ago. I just read an article and a case study on blockchain technology and cryptocurrencies and the impacts of those in the future state, and how, I wrote my recent reflection paper on how the BRIC countries, Brazil, Russia, India, and China, and how they're looking to find an alternative to the US dollar, and potentially how cryptocurrencies down the road could impact that. That wasn't something that was even plausible 15, 20 years ago, So the point of that is, regardless of the industry, and it's always going to be evolving and changing. So you always want to stay on top of those current industry standards, any new academic white papers that come down the pike. And, Chris is going to hit into continuous learning on an individual leadership level. And then I'm going to break into it with from a team and organizational level. So, Chris.
Perfect. So there's a lot of these slides. I'm not going to read everything, but what I want you to take away is the bolded and underlined section. That's going to be our takeaways from each of these different areas. So the first one I talk about is the say-do gap. And so what we're meaning here is that right now, we want to make sure that you don't, as a leader and as a manager, we want to make sure that you're pushing your team when you're saying, hey, this is where I want you to accomplish. And then your team is actually meeting those standards, and you're giving them the tools and the learning tools to actually meet that, right? So you want to say something and do it, but you don't want to miss out on those. You don't want to miss out on those opportunities by always taking everything as a learning opportunity. So sometimes you have to execute, sometimes you have to accomplish things, and then learning happens after. Or sometimes you have time while you're doing an evolution, or you're doing a situation, or you're in a business meeting to learn on the spot. You can take time away, but you want to make sure that you are always have a period set aside or intentional about learning from what you're doing. The next concept is called the bubble barrier. And what this means is that we all believe that we'll use this example. The NBA bubble during COVID. If anyone watches the NBA or watched that situation, they were called in the bubble. And they couldn't have anyone outside of that. There's certain listed people inside the bubble while they're playing in the NBA playoffs. And that's kind of the idea of your internal teams. Your internal team has your 12, 13, 14, 20, 100, whatever amount of people that are on your team. And the learning or the knowledge, if you only focus on what you all know and look at each other for knowledge, you're only limited to what you all know. So the bubble barrier is, we want to make sure that managers go outside of the bubble, right? There's nothing stopping us from going outside to find those external resources. That's why things like Gartner, Forrester, EY when they do white papers, Harvard Business Review, all those people do reviews of information and knowledge, because outside sources sometimes have a better perspective or can give knowledge to a situation that we ourselves inside the bubble can't see because we're too close to the problem. So that objective feedback and that objective perspective really helps us gain information. And then the time trap. So time in this case, we all believe that we either don't have the time right now to learn, or that because we know we're going to learn in the future, we're not going to take the time now to learn, even if we do have the time. So this time trap is we always want to look for that perfect moment. We always want to look for that, oh, I know that this is when we're going to be able to learn. So if we don't do that, then we're never going to get to the spot. We don't want to get stuck as a manager in this situation saying, well, we'll learn later. It's like saving money. Like, oh, we'll save down the road. When right now you could learn. Because in most situations, you forget the specific details and you forget the context. And all you remember is the emotional state, either of success or in some case, people call it failure. But either success or failure, and the emotion that went with it. Because you forget the context of who said what and when and why they said it. And the details other than what you've written down. You don't remember why you made that shorthand note during the situation. So always take the time while you have it. Don't get stuck saying we'll do the perfect learning later. Learn now. Next slide, Jeff. So in this case, how do we do that? How do we do the say, do, gap? And so we want to make sure that we have shared learning goals and that everyone knows what you're trying to accomplish as a manager. So you share it openly, you sit down and say, the goal of this evolution or the goal of this business meeting, the goal of this brainstorming session, the goal of this enablement session from this outside company is to do X. And so as long as everyone's going toward the same goal, they can make sure that, hey, you know what, we know we're accountable to success. Next slide. Oh, actually, sorry, Jeff, did everyone have time to write that down? If they want to write it down, I don't want to go too quickly. Throw me a thumbs up if you all are good. Helps. Sweet. Awesome. Next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, bubble bearing. So this is, you have your, maybe you're a specific operations team, or maybe you're a dev team that's worked on something. Maybe you're in finance, maybe you're in HR, whatever. And you have the knowledge that's in context or contextual to your space. You want to go to cross-functional groups. This is that communication we talked about, where you have that communication sideways to your peers. You have the communication up to your executives and leadership, the briefing, and then communication to your team that you're sharing. So this is a situation where we're looking left and right to our peers and we're going, hey, peers who know knowledge from this expertise level or this situation, can you come into my team and give us enablement or give us understanding, give us perspective? And sometimes that peer or that people you're searching from can be outside your organization and they may have the knowledge. That's how you break the bubble. Okay, so for time trap, how you do this is kind of the concept we did, but this idea of micro learning, or taking these small short snippets of time to be intentional about learning, and you can compound upon the situation. So as you're going, if you have the time, and it's not time sensitive usually while you're in a situation, you can give your team feedback, immediate feedback of, hey, Lucy, you did really well. I think that with how you did it, we got the job done, but I think next time let's figure out a way to do it more efficiently. Awesome feedback, right? 1 minute weekly review. So this is like at the end of the week, this is internal as a manager. Here's what my goals for the week were. Here's how I accomplished them. Here's the things I could have done better. And that helps you review your own internal learning, your own efficacy as a leader. And then strength accelerator. This is just being intentional about what you want to focus on or what you want to put more effort toward. We're putting more effort in a situation. I was going to use a different reference, but I don't think it would work here. But more effort toward a situation. So in this case, you want to say, what is something that I know, an action or something I did that I know I can work on, or I can put more effort toward, intentional effort to be better with it next time, because I know it's a continual thing that will come up. Slide, please. So what do we do in terms of learning? This is some of the stuff that Jeff and I look at and we learn with. This can be going on the LinkedIn learning sessions. This can be like the different quiz courses they have, things like that. If you haven't heard of Coursera, a lot of universities, Stanford, Harvard, University of Michigan, international universities, Penn, a lot of different Ivy League schools, a lot of different like business schools have certified courses on Coursera you can take. They're 36 hours to multiple weeks. And so if you're trying to find learning outside of your own situation, outside of your own expertise that your company doesn't provide or you don't have access to, Coursera is a relatively cheaper way to find that, to be a continual learner. Another thing, TED Talks look at people's expertise, and that may not be this is the end all be all or the research behind what they're talking about, but it's a point of reference or somewhere to start to give you ideas. Like I don't go on Wikipedia to get the answer. I go down to the resources people put on Wikipedia to go look it up myself. So that's kind of what the TED Talk to me is hey, this is some information I can go think about. Now I'm going to go back and find out where they got that info. Udemy, another situation. Industry white papers. This is Forrester, Gartner, EY puts out papers. Companies that I work with put out papers. Your own company may put out white papers. So, I mean, I think Jeff wrote a white paper, he's got one out there. Go read it. So it's things like that are like people put out those industry white papers of expertise based on their knowledge. And I learned this as a young person that even if you don't like someone, they may have more experience than you. Therefore, they have a perspective that you haven't thought about. So I'm going to use that perspective and say yes or no to their information. Then Harvard, as we said, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to jump in on that last statement. I think one of the best things you can do is listen to someone's perspective or even have a conversation with someone that you may not totally agree with a lot of things on to hear that perspective, because that opens your eyes to a lot of different things. And in the end of the day, you do not have to agree with it. But what it does, it gives you empathy and helps you understand where they're coming from better than just taking a, subjective interpretation of it. You actually get to understand what they're truly thinking, what their beliefs are, and why. Again, you do not have to believe in it at all. You do not have to agree with it, but you can understand it, and that will make you a better leader, regardless of what the subject is. That's such an awesome statement. I'm glad you said it, Chris. So go ahead. Sorry about that.
Yeah. The last thing I want to say for continual learning is that my own philosophy and something that I instilled in the teams that I ran and the teams that I worked with that were highly successful is that you either succeed or you learn. So in all situations, we either were successful and then we got feedback based on our success and got better at it, or we learned. In this situation, we weren't as successful as we needed to be. We didn't hit the standard, right? And we learned from that and got better the next time. So in success, the last thing I'll say is in success, you don't want to be hampered by your success. Don't just assume that because you were successful, there's nothing to learn from it and there's nowhere to go upon that. And Jeff's going to go into continual improvement. That's kind of the idea we're pushing into next is don't, as I say, rest on your laurels, but don't be penned in by you being successful one time, because you still have to go back and say, is there a way I could have done this better? How can we improve? And if you have that mindset, you're going to get to the idea of world class. So Jeff, I'll hand it over to you to go into continuous improvement. But if anyone has any questions on learning, just let me know.
We'll just take a pause right there real quick. If there are any questions anywhere in regards to continuous learning, kind of on an individual or small team level. If not, we can move on, but I'll give it a second. If you guys have something, feel free to bring it up.
Or comments. We put out 6 or so references or like resources, but if someone has something else that they use, even if it's the Wall Street Journal, like things like that you use or you read to learn, like let us know.
All right, cool. All right, so continuous improvement. So this is something that when I was at Bose was a Lean Six Sigma company. So if you are familiar with Lean Six Sigma, I think it's one of the most amazing tools that has ever been developed, and even methodologies, if you will. Lean Six Sigma originated, or really was made famous, I'll say, with Toyota back in the 80s with their development and with their development of cars. Obviously, Toyota is an extremely reliable car, and they did that by optimizing their assembly line process, minimizing the amount of car parts, making a more efficient assembly system, which made in turn a more reliable car. The next big company that took over was GE. And I think I may have talked about GE in the past few weeks ago. If not, I apologize. But, GE from 1986, 87, all the way up until 2001, there was a CEO that took over. He implemented lean methodology and cost reduction, which basically took GE and placed them on the map in this multi tens of billions of dollar company that we know, this huge industrial giant that they are now. That time frame was huge, and it was all built around Lean Six Sigma principles. And the reason why I'm a huge proponent to it, right, is while a lot of those guys are actually true manufacturers of products or assembly of product, Lean Six Sigma does not need to apply to only manufacturing. It is now used in hospitality, like the hotel industries. That's very widely used in software development. It's really limitless in regards to where you can use it and how you can use it, because it's more of a methodology. So we're going to tap into a little bit of that right now. So what is lean? So lean methodology is a set of practices and principles aimed at optimization of business processes. In practice, lean aims to create as much value for the customer while simultaneously fostering an efficient workplace that values respect and teamwork. And in turn, while it also value for the customer, it eliminates waste in your processes. And we'll go into waste a little bit later. Today, lean is applied across many fields, from healthcare to software development, as I mentioned. So continuous improvement here, I just want to talk about, let's go back one, excuse me. So main aspects for continuous improvement, right? Ideas from employees are value. So fostering a creative environment is huge in lean methodology. And the reason for it is everyone has a different perspective on how to solve a problem. If you're a top-down company, you don't foster that creativity to grow and optimize the ability to provide a unique or creative solution to a challenge that your company may be facing. You're limiting yourself by not allowing your employees to voice their ideas, right? Minor changes are more important than paradigm shifts. So little things make the big things happen. It's something that you say, right? Like if you always do the little things, big things are going to happen. So it's the same thing when it comes to this methodology. If you're looking to continuously improve, don't try to make this massive paradigm shift, right? Just always keep doing the little things consistently over time. And from a company and organization perspective, low-hanging fruit is easiest to clean up without removing the whole tree. Continually solve small problems. And when you're solving these, implement processes that maintain that solution so they don't fall back on the same problems and you have reoccurring problems, right? So the big thing here is to solve these minor problems, build momentum. They're also the most affordable to solve. So if you're looking at a massive investment, this massive paradigm shift, this is a huge thing that's going to change, that could be the case. However, it's not always necessary. Look at some of the stuff that you can solve first, the small stuff you can solve first, before you look into the big stuff. Because a lot of times those little things are going to make that big thing happen automatically. And even if you do make the huge investment and those little things are there, it's not going to help that big investment run as efficiently as it can. Reflection is key to improvement. I'm going to use this as the after action report example in the military. After every single event, I'll just say that every single thing we did, we had an after action report or review. So we got in a circle. It can be very informal, and we would start from the beginning and break down every little detail all the way to the end. And that includes planning, execution, planning, infiltration, execution, exfiltration, coming home, everything. And every little piece of that puzzle, it was under the microscope on how we could improve it. And we just picked small things that we did, and we always try to get better. But the thing is you have to be open to reflection, or you have to be willing to reflect on every single situation in order to have a continuous improvement process. You always have to be looking for opportunities to improve, not just being like, wow, we made a mistake. Well, how can you look for an opportunity to improve before that big mistake happens again? Is more about this happening, right? Empowered employees take responsibility and participate in improvements. So if you're looking to make minor changes all the time, the best thing you can do is have other people lead those changes, take action into their own hands. If they see a problem, they should have the ability to fix it, or at least implement a suggestion to do so. They shouldn't have to wait for you to see it and then call a meeting, have this big organizational process reshift, right? Like if they see something small, something's wrong, they should have the power to fix it on their own. And that's also going to speed up the process, because the more they can take care of stuff, the less stuff you see, and the less stuff you have to the less stuff you have to bog down your employees with in regards to meetings, solutioning, brainstorming sessions, process development, all the other stuff, right? You have to foster a culture when you do this. So lean, the biggest aspect for lean when you start to do this is there has to be buy-in from the top, but buy-in has to be trickled all the way down. So when they do that, the issues that they see shouldn't be minor issues, because they should be empowering their employees are empowered to solve them on their own. And that should be understood from the top, that these smaller things can and will be accomplished by employees taking charge or taking initiative to solve these things, right? And the next biggest takeaway is stay tuned next week, because part of week 8 bonus week, right? I'm going to do a small introductory, slightly more detailed presentation on Lean Six Sigma. It's a huge thing. A lot of what I'm building and refocusing my own business around is implementing Lean Six Sigma into small businesses as one aspect, on top of building the proper leadership and development skills to do so. So I recently graduated from Syracuse University with a Lean Six Sigma Green Belt certificate. And there's different level belts. Green's pretty legit. Black is the next one. And then if the further you go up, now instead of like implementing rules in the game, you're starting to change rules in the game. So it takes a lot of time and practice to get to that level. So if you guys can learn, a yellow and a green and a black belt, you're going to be amazing at it, right? So what I want to do is start to help you guys understand what this is available to you, because this process, this methodology can be implemented whether you're in real estate, whether you're in software development, whether you're in actual manufacturing, whether you're in leadership. It's all about understanding what you're doing end to end from a customer journey perspective, understanding the process that it takes for that to happen, and how do you improve those processes over time. So, and then the next big takeaway of that is the learning opportunities that go with Lean Six Sigma. So the first 2 biggest points is, I'm going to say, for tools wise, these are tactical tools of if you can understand how to implement a value stream map and how to properly execute a brainstorming session. And I mean that legitimately. Brainstorming sessions can be very informal or they can be very formal. But if you can hit everything from informal to very formal in a brainstorming session, there is literally nothing you can't solve. And then you can implement that solution by creating a value stream map. If you can do those 2 things early on in your Lean Six Sigma career, there's not much else that you can't do, right? What I will say also, for the 2 links below on Coursera, as we mentioned, for great individual learning, these are self-taught courses. They're relatively short. The yellow belt is the kind of the first level that you can get for Lean Six Sigma. I don't think these are accredited or certified, but they are definitely enough knowledge that will equate you to being at this level. And then you can take courses later on, just jump into a Lean Six Sigma green belt. But who's that? Trace, you have to jump off. No problem. This is recorded. I can send it to you afterwards. But the yellow belt is a great baseline for you to understand and kind of start. The other course, Lean Six Sigma Principles, this is even more of a foundational course than yellow belt. It builds the principles of the actual Lean Six Sigma for you to grow into a yellow belt and then further up into a green belt. And as far as you want to, take it. But it's a great opportunity. Like I said, you have 2 tools that you can kind of master and implement. You can pretty much solve 80 to 90% of all your issues. And then 2 opportunities to kind of learn and understand the basic principles as you kind of go forward. So with that, we are in our hot seat coaching part of our show, if you will. So what questions, concerns, thoughts that you have that you maybe want to ask in regards to your businesses, your situations, from the topic that we covered this week?
So I'll just say one of the things that stuck with me was when Chris mentioned like learning now instead of waiting, because I actually signed up for a accounts payable manager certification course like in January, and I keep kicking the can down the road, and I'm like, oh, when I have more time, I'm gonna do that. So I'm realizing the importance of like, if I just do that, then I can implement some things now, which will make me a better leader, a better manager, and like open up new opportunities. So yeah, I just think that was something that stuck with me.
That's awesome. And Chris, please feel free to jump in and add on to that. But that time trap, as Chris mentioned, it doesn't even have to revolve around individual learning. That can be with anything. Oh, don't worry. Like, I got plenty of time for this. And then all of a sudden, all your time's gone. Like every single micro opportunity there is to learn or take advantage of someone else's perspective. You're just building tools into your toolbox. You're learning, you're growing, you're expanding. That's what it's all about. Don't ever miss an opportunity.
In this case, the idea is like, it's better to keep up than catch up, right? You always feel as if like you have to take extra time out of your day because something else is always going to come up if you feel like you have to catch up. So in a situation when you're going to be intentional about it and you want to like make this a priority, you'll set aside the time and then you're keeping up with your learning versus having to catch up to where you want to be and where you think you're going to be successful.
And Linda, the last thing I'll add, and I'm going to take a page out of what Murillo mentioned a couple of weeks ago, and I don't know if you were on the call, but he's like, when I write my blogs, I have to write them in the morning. He's like, that's when I'm the most creative and whatnot. So you also have to find the time, and you should notch more time into your day or find the right time in your day to, do those micro learning sessions. Even if it's like, hey, I'm going to take a half hour to read, an article on hbr.org or something like that. I'm going to take an hour out of my day to go onto LinkedIn Learning or knock out something in Coursera, like just chip away at that stuff. So yeah, Andrew, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say one thing that resonated with me, and I'm super bummed. I can't remember who the entrepreneur or who said this, but the one thing that they mentioned is that every time you get into routine, you actually lose progress. It's so good that, a routine is so good for time management. It's very good for, being efficient, but it also kills creativity. So like even as simple as going to a different grocery store, working in a different room, kind of what's the word?
Reinvigorates.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Like different parts of your brain, because you go into the grocery store, the eggs are in the back, you go down the side, you can grab a bag of chips, but you go into a new grocery store, you don't know where the chips are, you can't find the eggs. It like proposes new challenges for you to achieve. So applying that to like a business mindset, I started going to conferences that weren't in my industry, just kind of learning about different ways of doing things, why this industry does it this way, why they run their HR this way, why they do time management this way. And I think it just opens up and kind of broadens your horizons of what other people do. Cause I don't know the mix of the people in this room, but like as a business owner, you're just so focused on achieving what you're trying to achieve. You kind of put blinders on just to kind of tick things off the bucket list. And without kind of opening up those blinders and trying new things and looking at different processes, you're not really going to change or evolve. So yeah, that was one thing that you guys said earlier that kind of really resonated.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's great. There's a few routine things that, like, if you know that waking up and drinking water when you wake up like makes you successful for the day, like there's things like that you want to keep. But the idea in terms of like the only way you learn is through being uncomfortable and building those new synapses, like I think that's absolutely necessary. It's just like your tires in your car. If you drive home the exact same way, you make the same right turn every day, and when you go to the mechanic, they're going to go, well, you got to rotate your tires. You have this wear on your right side of your tires because you always turn that same way. So if you don't think about those things, by the time your tires are bad, you're like, oh, why are these messed up? Because you're doing the same thing every single day and not thinking about it. So I think it's a great point to bring up.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. What else we got?
Definitely like what you said, either Chris, when you said you either succeed or you learn, because like failure is only failure when you stop learning, like when you quit. And I like what you said pretty much said about that, and about the conversation you have with somebody, even if you don't particularly agree with them. That's how you think. Collect different ideas, see people for their different perspectives, really understand them and how the world works. And you don't have to contradict your beliefs by understanding where they're coming from, or necessarily entertaining that into your belief system, but just to see how that really improves yourself as a leader, to be able to sit there, listen, and critically think, and then whether you want to implement it in your leadership qualities or your lifestyle, you can, or you have that feedback from somebody else and you understand them.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, like in most situations, in a business situation or in the military or wherever you are, right? Most people are not trying to sabotage the team to be successful. Which could not trying to sabotage the team's success. So if that's the case, and they do something, you're like, I don't know why you did that. I don't agree with you. I don't agree with your methodology. I don't agree with the way you think about things. But you ask them and you understand why, then you get to know that there's some thought process or some knowledge that they have that may be different than what you have, because they're also pushing towards success the same way you are. So you're like, why did you do this? I need to know, even if I don't like you, like this would be successful. Maybe I can learn from that and do it better than you did, because you didn't do well, right? But I know you're not trying to sabotage. So like, how do I find that out? And I think that's a great way to, like, even if they don't like you, they respect you because you listen. So I think it's great to try to incorporate that.
Yeah, great input, Wade. And you're absolutely right. Like, the only time that you truly fail is when you stop looking at everything as an opportunity. So very well said. Nice job.
Absolutely.
Yeah, go ahead, Linda.
Yeah, just to add to that, like, I think it's also interesting to consider in situations where you may not like somebody, like the emotional intelligence aspect of it. Why don't I like this person? Like, what is it about them? And is that a reflection of something I don't like in myself? Or, it like that hit.
It did. That was deep. And you're 100% right. And that's a very challenging thing for people to look at. They won't look at themselves when they look at some of the issues that they have with other people. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, so definitely like learning from multiple places, the emotional standpoint of it, the self-reflection, and then the business processes part of it as well, or like understanding their perspective. It's not fun, but it helps.
It also makes you callous. Like we talked about having earlier in the course, having a difficult conversation, kind of helps put fires out before they start, or, makes a big fire, or prevents a small fire turning into a big fire, So like, to your point, the stronger you are, it's a muscle. like anything else. Like your emotional intelligence, your ability to empathize and do these different aspects of leadership that are very, very challenging. It's a muscle. It really is. Just like it is like the muscle of certainty. Like the more you're comfortable with having these types of conversations, as well as, you know, having those types of conversations done properly and properly executing them, those are just, you're just going to go above and beyond everyone else. You're going to roll over people, you know, they won't, you will be just blowing through the competition. So
Mm.
Jeff, I just want to mention this to everyone. Jeff and I had a conversation about improvement in learning. We were talking, this was before we had the course, but we were talking about some things that his leaders that he's seen, but they do a lot. And what he was doing before is that a lot of times the leader, or in that case, the officer, would not be the one coming up with the initial planning session for everything. Because in a lot of situations, if you yourself as the manager, are the one that's always coming up with the idea or the solution to a problem. Jeff mentioned the end, right? Like having people bought in. But if you're the only one coming with a solution and you are married in your mind, it's like, this is mine, now it has to work. And then you therefore lose the capability, a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times, you lose the capability to be objective about which solution is the best solution, because you're married to your own. And so if you have those experts and those people that you built around, you built the best team, giving them the responsibility and the capability to come up with those solutions lets you as a leader go, I see this is great from this one, this is great from this, we can mix them, or that's a great solution. I'm not married to anything and I can be objective about what's going to be most successful to us moving forward. So that's something I know he didn't bring it up, but we've talked about that previously in terms of leadership conversation. I think that's just the thing to take away is you don't have to be the one that always comes with a solution. Find those experts and find those great people around you. Let them develop a solution or multiple solutions to the problem. They're bought in, and then therefore you know that I've chosen the best one for us to be successful with all the context you have as the leader.
totally. So when we talked about on 2 slides ago, empowering your people to, you know, not only develop their learning, but like, you know, solve problems on their own. You walk up to your team and exactly like Chris said, if an officer walked up to our team and was like, hey, this is what we're supposed to do. I want 3 ways to do it. And, you know, by tomorrow. So number one thing he's doing, he probably has some stuff in the back of his mind, but he's not allowing himself to get sucked into the situation so deep that he can't see anything else. He's allowing other people to provide ideas that he may not be able to see, that could be directly in front of him. And then he's going to provide the best. He's going to pick the best option. Imagine going up to your team that you have full confidence in and be like, hey, we keep losing customers, you know, for X reason. I need you to help solve this. And then just walk away. And they're going to be like, well, what boundaries do we have? What about this? And be like, none. I just need a problem. I need you to give me 5 solutions by the end of this week, the best solutions you possibly can. And then just look at what happens. And you'd be blown away.
There you go. You froze for a second, Jeff, if you want to go back for a second.
Oh, I was just saying, like, you'd be blown away by allowing people the ability to solve a problem without boundaries. It's nuts. It's so empowering for everyone on that team. They'll be excited for the next problem that pops up.
I think that relates a lot to what I'm going through now at work, where like I'm the leader of the project and a lot of people are coming to me asking questions like, well, what's the process for this? You know, how do we explain this? And I try to push it back to them like, well, what do you think? You know, because if I'm spending all of my time trying to answer these people's questions and coming up with stuff, one, like all of the information is going to come from me. And it's like, I'm not leveraging my team. I'm not delegating enough, you know, so I'm trying to make sure that I can leverage my team for that. And I have started feeling that they don't really want to do that. They just want someone that gives them the information. And that bothers me because yeah, it's just not conducive to a good team. Like a few weeks ago, we were drafting an email to send out to the company to let them know of the presentation that was happening, and someone in a AP manager position, which is technically a position one level above me, she was like, what should the subject line be of the email? I'm like, you can't think of what the subject line would be? Like, I just gave you the whole email draft. So yeah, accounts payable is AP. Yeah, so that stuck with me, and I'm just like noticing the morale and the energy is very low. And I don't have anyone that reports to me as in terms of org chart, but it feels like the whole AP team comes to me for these things, and I'm kind of like, well, I'm not getting paid for this yet.
So why do you think they have those issues? Like, what is it, that person specifically that have just, they don't feel empowered, they've never been empowered, they're afraid to, just be wrong, so they always want to make sure that they're on the right path? Or do you feel like it's something that with that organization that's holding them back?
It's definitely not just that person. So it's that person has the accounts payable team under them, and I think her leadership is what is causing bad morale across the team. So I'm thinking, maybe she's influencing it in that way by just looking for information and kind of being lazy in a way. I don't know exactly. I just think that in my company, a lot of people are just kind of over it, just because of everything that's happened over the course of the years, management changes and things like that. And we're also anticipating more changes. So there's some job insecurity there too. So it's kind of like, and I felt it too. And I had to really let go of that to accomplish the mission that I had just now. And now I feel good about it, and I feel empowered to go. If I want to, I can go somewhere else, and yeah.
Yeah, good for
So,
you. Yeah, you should never you should have full confidence in what you have to offer. So you shouldn't be ever feel pigeonholed in a specific job, a specific role, anything like that. So good for you for getting out of that funk on your own and realizing that. So that's awesome.
I got a question for Linda. Hey, Linda, how did your presentation go? I may have missed that if you guys talked about it, but I just was curious.
yeah. Thank you for asking, Marilio. It was great. It went great. Some like slight technical issues with like the slides, but outside of that, presentation was on point. I had my script, I read through it. Everyone, well, not everyone, but a lot of people reached out to me after, and they were like, thank you so much. This is so helpful. It was so clear and concise, and it was short. So it was like an hour when I thought it was going to be an hour and a half. So yeah, I'm very happy about it. And I'm presenting again on Thursday. So I'm gonna think about ways that I could make it even better. And
Okay, so I was thinking about you yesterday, and the new version of PowerPoint has a AI coach that you practice your tech while it films you and also gives you your cadence, your words per minute, the replacing words that you mispronounce, which in my case, for some reason I cannot say irresistible and I kept saying mispronouncing that. I said, I know how to say that word. It's just my accent. But regardless, it gives you also, if you do the video, it tells you how close, if you're moving your head too much, if you're far from the camera.
wow.
It's amazing. So I had a presentation this morning with the team that I coach from different countries, and I had to be very deliberate about word choices, inclusivity, and the types of things that I present, because they are in 10 different time zones, and it's really dynamic. And the AI coach kind of walked me through a lot of the stuff. Even though it was a 10-minute presentation, I just did it for the fun of it. And I thought, oh my gosh, Linda would love this, because it's like instant feedback, and you can practice, and you can pause it, and it tells you your tone and the types of how fast you are with the ideal speed of your presentation. And if you read your slides, it dings you, say, don't read the slides, it's already on the slide, create other content that kind of enhances the slide. And I was gonna, I had several conversations with the thing, kind of, going back and forth, but that's a really super easy thing to do, and it's built in. So if you have the new version of PowerPoint, go for it. You're gonna love that.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. I think that'll be really helpful for future presentations that I do. AI is amazing, also scary.
Growing fast.
Yeah.
So that idea is, it's great. I think that's like going to be super helpful in terms of presentation wise, like having that feedback. But got to make sure that you are giving the right inputs to a lot of that stuff too. So make
Mhm,
sure you're looking at that.
for sure. Yeah, I'm gonna explore that.
All right. Well, I think that, we can end on another positive note with Linda sharing her experience. But thank you guys very much for another successful week. Next week is our last week. It's our bonus week. We're going to hit Lean Six Sigma. We're going to give you guys a present or surprise for being a part of the last 8 weeks. So thank you all very much
Are
for
we
coming.
getting cake? Is that what it is? Is it cake?
I'm gonna
Yes,
personally. I'm gonna
It's one of
personally
those
deliver a
mail
cake.
cakes
Yeah,
that doesn't have any dairy that can go through the mail.
We want
exactly.
some cake. Come on.
You've seen me bake. You don't want that nonsense, Marilio. So we are gonna pick it up next week with that, and we'll give a good send-off gift and close this series. But just with that being said, and we'll remind you guys next week, we have 2 series coming up later in the fall. I think one in September timeframe, whenever Chris is ready, and one a few weeks or a month after that with the Lean Six Sigma introduction for you guys. But we have 2 courses coming up soon, but we'll close it out the right way next week. So thank you guys very much for coming. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, guys. Have a good rest of your day.
Have a great evening.
All right, see you all
Bye.
next week.